don't already know me, I'm Tao Law, the SVP of Marketing at Uptempo. So we're marketing planning software, helping marketing ops teams plan better, spend smarter, and execute with confidence. And it's quite timely because planning season is around the corner for some of you as well. And we host these events to really help lift each other up because we believe MOPS can take a strategic role in their organizations. And I'm going to talk about some boring housekeeping right now. So we're going to dive in to, you'll see the agenda. We're going to dive into each of the 4 sections today. At the end of each section, we're going to have an audience Q&A. So please use the Q&A button to add your questions. And if we call in your question, we'll invite you to share your video and audio to ask the panelists the questions. And if you have to have something to chime in, please just raise your digital hands and we'll also invite you to share your video and audio to chime in on that question as well. But apologies in advance, we will need to interrupt people to move on. So thank you. Hand it over to Daryl.
All right. So yes, exciting. So just like Tal said, be brave and raise your hand. And so you can talk in front of the group. We love to hear from you. And it doesn't have to be a question. You can actually make a comment on if you think AI is fake. Not AI is fake, but like if you think it's mostly hype, which mixed feelings about that one. So please enter the Q&A, and that's how we're going to call people. This is a really exciting topic, and the topic is adapting to change, the top marketing ops priorities for the future. And I think this is really, I'm excited about this topic because it allows us to kind of cover multiple things at the same time, like AI, how do we get aligned ops for impact? How do we work with other people and navigating change? Honestly, there's so much change right now that it's both scary, exciting, and I'm very curious to hear what the panelists are doing. So I can maybe adopt those own practices at work. So excited to have you all here. Anyway, let's get into introducing the panelists. And when I call on you, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us, your role and maybe anything that you want to share. And let's start with Natalie. Natalie, introduce yourself, please.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Natalie Ryan. I am AVP of our Global Marketing Operations organization at RingCentral. I've been with RingCentral since 2016. So it's been a long journey here. And I actually live in Oxford, Mississippi. Most of y'all may have never even been to Mississippi. So little known fact about me.
I love that. How big is RingCentral now? I know it was growing pretty quickly.
Oh, gosh, we're probably about, I know we're a $2.5 billion company. When I started here, just a little tidbit, we were a $250 million company.
Oh, wow.
Now we're valued at $2.5 billion. So that's been super fun to be a part of. And we've got about 6,000 people.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. And, just work your way to the top of marketing operations. That's how you do it. Thanks, Natalie. Scott, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Scott Laird. I lead the growth marketing and operations team at Yext. I joined Yext about 2 years ago in a marketing operations role, and since then my remit has grown. Now it includes campaigns, field marketing and events, business development, and marketing ops as well. We're really focused on driving a coordinated full funnel execution across GTM. So it's been a fun journey there. Before Yext, I did about 12 years at Microsoft in primarily marketing ops focused roles, and I have worked at Starbucks, AWS, and a couple other stops along the way before arriving at Yext. And I'm based in Denver, Colorado area.
Awesome. Excited to learn from you, Scott. Thanks for having us here, or thanks for being with us. Carolyn, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Carolyn Raleigh. I am the Senior Marketing Technology Manager at Amazon Shipping and Freight. So I manage any of our processes as they feed into marketing operations. I've been at Amazon for a little over 18 months now, but I've really spent the last 15 years of my career largely in marketing operations. So excited to be here.
Woohoo! Go marketing ops. Love it. Thanks, Carolyn. Veronica, can you introduce yourself, please?
Happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Steele. I've been a marketing operations specialist for over 10 years. really focusing on social media marketing and technology and managing all the technology stack there. I've led cross-functional teams at AWS, Amazon Photos, Microsoft, and in higher education. So really happy to be here and have this conversation.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for being here, Veronica. And Amrita, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. So good to be here. My name is Amrita Suresh. I currently work for Asana as the head of go-to-market technology and AI transformation. I am based out in the Bay Area, been with Asana for about 4 years. Super excited to learn from you all and contribute to the conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. I would guess like more than half of us here are like fans of Asana. we should do like this
That's right.
poll. Like,
That's
do you like
right.
Asana or like do you like Monday? Or I heard like good things about this Oh, go ahead, Tal.
I was like, if Monday you're out there, we love you too. If you're in the crowd, so.
Monday. I don't know. I use Asana. So, all right. Great, great, great. So let's kick it off, Tal.
Yes. Okay. We have a fun poll, easy poll for everybody. I don't think the panelists can vote in this one, but it's which statement best describes you. So this will kick us off for our AI and automation conversation. So I don't use AI regularly. I use AI for personal use. I use AI at work, and AI has produced tangible results for me at work. So the best describes you. And yes, we get the same comments every time. Oh, I can't choose. Yes, you have to choose. Just one. Thank you.
You have to choose. Yeah. And for the panelists, just since you can't vote, just pick a vote in your mind and we're going to cover it. Which best describes you? Oh, I doubt anybody's going to pick the I don't use AI. I shouldn't say that. We're all different. Never mind.
But we should call them out. We should like, who did that? We want to talk to.
I don't know.
I can't tell if it's most people have voted or not. I can't see in my view. So let's just wrap it up and see. Oh, look at that.
Okay, yeah. So there are some people that don't use it regularly, and that's late bloomers, fine. I use AI at work is 39%. Oh, I love it. 61 people have actually produced tangible results for me at work. Super interesting. Super interesting. Natalie, what would you have voted for if you could? And what do you think about the results?
I think it's interesting that there were a few that are late bloomers. It's a number one priority here at RingCentral. Everybody has to bring AI into their day-to-day, period. So coming from the top down, I would have chosen the tangible results.
Oh, have you? Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you give me just a quick example or yeah?
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to. I would say like for us, there's a lot of different pathways and ways that you can apply it, right? So for our marketing ops team is made up of like an analytical arm and then a technical arm. Our technical arm is like all DevOps, integrations, things like that. And then we have the analytics side of things. We've been able to use it and had tangible results in both. I'll focus on one example. With our technical arm, for example, we were very heavily dependent on things like Talend and Boomi to kind of do automation for us. But that's also super expensive. So we've been able to use AI to essentially help us be more efficient in writing our own Python code so that we can do all of these jobs and integrations ourselves and essentially do it for free, rather than spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on tools that do this for you. That's been our most tangible result. So some of our team went from never knowing Python at all to being able to do all of this with the help of AI tools. So that's one example. Another example is we've launched AI for like outbound prospecting using Reggie. So, making sure that we're actually messaging to people that should be hearing from us more often, as opposed to like letting reps kind of make that determination on their own. And another example is we've actually been using AI to build our own bots to like sum up how you should be speaking to a lead. So if we get a lead and we know that they're this title from this industry and these are their talking points and these are the products that they would be interested in, we're actually using AI to sum that up and present it to our sales reps before they make a call. There's more, but those are my main ones.
No, thanks for sharing. Honestly, that's really inspiring. I feel like, from a lot of our conversations, people are struggling. But to use AI to write Python and then to do prospecting with, it's called Reggie, you said?
Yes, Reggie.
We definitely have to check that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Love it. Okay, Tal. Ready for the first question?
So it is very interesting. I'm curious how the panel feels about this. When it comes to AI, what can we really use right now and what's just fluff? I mean, if you just look at your LinkedIn feed, looks like everybody is doing super advanced things, but what is the hype and what is real? So we've heard from Natalie. Does anybody else want to weigh in on that, on what's really happening in your orgs?
Yeah, I can jump in. I'd say there's a a zillion startups in AI, so there's definitely a lot of hype. I don't think any of them are necessarily fluff. I think it's all really interesting ideas and really nice innovations. I'd say so far we're seeing kind of practical value focusing on AI that's really directly improving workflows, not like wholesale replacing processes. So similarly, we haven't got into the Python code yet, but using tools like 6 Sense conversational email just to drive faster lead follow-up and better qualify leads, or we've deployed ChatGPT Team pretty broadly across the marketing organization to assist with everything from, on-brand content iteration to account research for the BDRs. So, leaning into new tools and exploring new tools that are focused in those areas, thinking about like how to highlight intent and engagement trends at the account level and make the BDRs and the sellers more productive. But I'm not sure we need a tool for all of those things. I think there's some interesting ways to just build our own workflows with, the LLMs that we already have access to and get a lot of that done.
I just want to add to that, Scott, because one of the things that I agree with you, I don't think anything is really fluff as much as it is more, it's important to have people on your team that can kind of make the assessment on whether it's just a nice UI or it's really, the actual meat of the tool is important. So my team, there's a few people on my team that I'm fortunate enough to have that kind of, they focus on that assessment, because there are so many startups and a lot of people will say, oh, this is so exciting, it can make PowerPoints for me, or oh, this can do this. But sometimes it's just the UI that looks nice, right? And there's certain things that you can actually kind of do yourself. So I do think that's an important distinction to make, as opposed to thinking one particular thing is fluff.
I think that's a great point right there too. And I think when it comes to hype, it's going to take over all of our jobs. I disagree. And I think that's where I see the hype, is that AI is everything, and it's not. It's the hot conversation and hot topic right now. And I don't think it's going anywhere by any means, but I think that it's a partnership. I think humans in the loop is like one of my favorite key phrases when it comes to AI. Like, if anything, it's to help us dive deeper into our roles and wherever we sit in that, and helping everyone in the company understand that. Because I think sometimes that messaging gets lost when it comes from leadership, because it's AI, and this is what we're doing, and look at all these big things. And I think that there's some hype in that. And then, I don't know, personally, I think that I don't think the AI, human-like AI, is not readily available yet. So the sci-fi AI that we keep talking about, the Sentinels, don't think we're there yet. I think that it is in sectors of the universe for sure, and being tested and looked at, but we're definitely not there yet. And so I think that there's a lot of fear in the workplace about how far and how fast it's going to go and come in that kind of way. But to both Scott and Natalie, your point, I think you're spot on. And that's what we're seeing is AI being used to help us with productivity and workflows and just work smarter, not harder, and really utilizing it in those kind of capacities, assessing our audience and finding our target audiences and all of these different ways that we can utilize it within marketing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's important too. I mean, that's been the kind of conversation that I've been a part of is AI going to take our jobs, especially when it comes to marketing operations? And I think it's important to denote that I don't think it's going to go that far, but I do, Veronica, to your point, I think there needs to be people who are on your team to understand how to utilize it, because I think that's the most important thing. If you don't know how to use AI, then potentially it is just fluff, because you have to be able to manipulate it yourself, be able to put the inputs in there and understand the outputs of it to be able to truly take advantage of what AI has to offer.
Just to kind of chime in to what everybody said, the way we look at AI in Asana is it's not a silver bullet that's going to solve for anything like the problem that exists out there. To what everybody said, human expertise is still needed. We see AI as an augmentation to increase productivity. I think just kind of tying some of the things back to the poll that was in there around, are you seeing tangible results with AI? Obviously, everybody wants to move to that state. Some of the success, and we are very much in that state where we look at the AI use cases and we are very thoughtful in picking what we need to be doing. Do we have a problem statement? Do we have clear KPIs and the results that we are going to be expecting to deliver with AI in use? So that's basically the framework that we put to make sure that when we implement an AI use case, we are seeing tangible results, not just from a productivity standpoint, but also is there a way it can materially move some of the critical KPIs that the business cares about? One thing that I also wanted to call out is, I think, Natalie, you mentioned this in terms of having a team that does this assessment, especially in the sales world. We have a bloated sales tech stack. So really being very thoughtful in assessing the build versus buy, because a lot of companies are offering their native AI solutions, and we do at Asana as well. Our AI studio is like an orchestration layer that pulls data from disparate sources, and then we are able to kind of centralize that through like an Asana task. So where can we use our internal native AI solution versus a third party is going to be one layer that I would look at. And also on the sales side, especially, experience of the reps is going to be really front and center. So how do we ensure we are not adding to what salespeople are doing, which could be counterproductive, as opposed to really like crafting that balance of productivity versus how do you be a good citizen of the company to support your own native AI solution? So crafting that balance is something I have personally seen it to be a little challenging, but I think we're still mastering the art of what perfection looks like when we make decisions on the AI solution.
Yep. Great points. Let's hear from Amanda. I don't know if Amanda, are you okay coming off mute, or can we let Amanda talk?
Yeah.
There you are.
Hi,
Hi.
Amanda.
Hey. I think you saw my question, but my question was like, I'm hearing conversational AI and leveraging AI to use in messaging. And actually our CMO asked us to have like a report of like what we're using in marketing with AI all the time. And I'm looking at conversational email and all those features, right? But there's this like control hesitation I have. So I'm curious of like how you as panelists and your orgs use like that kind of messaging with AI, and how you manage it with those human loops to kind of have checks to make sure what that messaging is still resonating with your brand and making sure that it looks quality, and as opposed to, and because that's the things that kind of concern me, like we could set it and forget it, but how do we make sure we continuously maintain that it's showing up the right way that we want it? That makes sense.
Yeah, I would love to jump in on that one. A personal story. I recently in my family, we just lost somebody in our family, our cousin, who was really young. He was only 44 years old, leaving his wife and 2 kids. So he was extremely techie. So my husband and I stepped in to help get his digital life in order for his wife and everything. So in that, going through and closing down accounts, right? Any account that had a credit card tied to it, I wanted to close it down. So not to call out Best Buy by any means, but it was with Best Buy, and I was on there saying I need to shut down this account, and it was a chat. And at first, I honestly couldn't quite tell if it was a chat bot because it was very conversational and it was empathetic. As I explained what I needed to do, and I could show proof, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm so sorry for your loss. Yes, we can help you. It'll take about 5 minutes, whatever. And I said, okay, fine, and so I'm sitting tight. And then it struck up a conversation, and I could tell it was trying to keep me engaged, as it's going to take it time. And it said, if you don't mind me asking, what are you doing this weekend? And I was like, unfortunately, more of this type of stuff. And it said, that's great. It's not great. And so now, coming from my background, I did laugh. I thought it was kind of funny because it can go wrong. I think one of something that we should always be cognizant of when it comes to chatbots or just using AI for content and Gen AI in general is the mistake of thinking it's 100%. My personal approach is 80%. 80% is AI's 100%. And that's how you maintain that human in the loop. Making sure that you have a mechanism in place to say, hey, maybe we don't have to audit it every day. Maybe we can get this to a standard where we can review it once a week or once a month. You pick your schedule, but audit it. You have to check in. You have to continue to pivot. You need feedback. And so if customers are coming back to you, I was trying to figure out how can I contact Best Buy to let them know, hey, you got to update your chatbot. Not everything is roses. And making sure that you're constantly plugged into it in that way, that's the part that takes diligence. And that's the part that I feel like we as employees, that's what we bring to the table. Again, that mistake that I recognize, and I see it more with leadership who are like, just let it run. And no, really thinking that AI, the 80% mark is 100% for AI, and making sure that we're all plugged in there. That's my 2 cents.
I think just to add to what you said, Veronica, the way we think about human in the loop, especially for the content quality checks, is we still have like a QA layer that is done by humans. We are not 100% AI or any messaging. So AI is going to really accelerate our messaging, crafting our messaging process. But we still have like a layer where we have like quality checks, content checks. We are not there yet where it's 100% automated, where an AI is going to basically go through all our brand guidelines, our creative copy. We're in there in that journey, but we still very much have people monitoring and making sure it is resonating with how we consistently communicate to our customer in terms of messaging.
Yeah, great points. I want to definitely get to Amit's question about FOMO because I really liked it. Amit, if you want to come off, that'd be great. And then I think that we're getting like really great questions, but I don't know if we're gonna have time for all of them, so we're gonna have to start cherry picking. So if the panelists want to type answers to some of these, if feel free, because I don't think we're gonna get to all of them. Like I don't know if we're gonna get to Samantha's or Amanda. We have to move to the next one. But go ahead, Amit. Can you ask your question about the FOMO one? I really like that one.
Yeah, so maybe I tried to be as articulation I could do, but very, very clearly, right? There are so many tools out there, right? And you pick a tool, you start using it, and then you see other tool which is similarly good. How do you people, miss out on the FOMO thing that that tool might be better? Should we sunset this, go to that? And every time you do a change, it takes another set of time. Again, I come from a startup background, very small team, and yeah, so
Yeah, I can take that.
You go ahead, I'll take it after.
Yeah. So leading marketing technology within Amazon shipping and freight, I think that's a big thing that you really have to kind of manage and understand. We do a lot of work when it comes to really evaluating all of the tools that are out there. I think it comes down to being really strategic about making sure that the tool that you're using is going to solve not only your current problems, but future thinking as well. Making sure that you can kind of think about, what does our roadmap look like? At Amazon, we're really big on, our 3-year plans, our 2-year plans, our 1-year plans, and making sure that we're evaluating tools that we know work for us in the short term, but also making sure that we understand what the tools roadmap is as well. I think that's super important, and something that's sometimes overlooked is understanding what is the tools roadmap? What do they look like? What are they looking to kind of implement to make sure that you don't have that FOMO, making sure that when you make that decision for that tool, because it is a huge investment and it's a huge time suck to try and implement tools and like change them if you have to. I think it really comes down to your planning and making sure that your goals that you're trying to meet also align with kind of the roadmap that these tools have laid out. And then it kind of avoids some of that FOMO. And you know that in that time, the energy that you're spending in building out a tool is going to serve you in the long run.
Yeah, I would build on that. We're going through that right now all the time. There's definitely well, we have this, but this tool could do this and this, or maybe this tool could be better, or, you know, things of that nature. There's been a few things that we've done to try to address that. First, I would 100% agree with you, Carolyn, that like we have to go back to the root of why did we even choose this tool in the first place, and did it do what we intended for it to do? And so just really making sure that you have all of your like aligned metrics to the tool that you purchased last year or last month, and making sure that it's delivering on what you kind of promised and what you were promised rather, and what you guys committed to doing is sort of the first key to sort of, you know, be able to say, look, we are getting this much out of this, whether it's pipeline or anything else. We tend to focus highly on pipeline. So are we getting that pipeline out of it? If yes, like let's not go chasing down alternatives to see if they can do better. If it's achieving the goal that we have. Now, that being said, I do think there's the, you know, shiny new object portion where you could consolidate certain things, right? There are, the more you see, it's like this tool does this and this tool does this, but this one does both. So it's hard to keep that at bay, but it can be a worthwhile investment. But really going back to what was our target and did we meet that target first before we go replace it is the first step.
No, thanks to both. Just one small thing. What happens when the shiny thing comes from the leadership, right? The founder, right? So it gets challenging. But yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that happens a lot, definitely. I will say I appreciate our leadership because they do trust us to do the assessment. Hey, here's what we're getting. Here we will watch a demo. We'll join. We'll test it out. If they'll do a POC, we'll do it. Right. And if it proves to be stronger, then we can go down that path. But usually we can kind of take that POC experience. We have a big thing on like, if they're not going to give you a POC, we're probably not going to go with that tool because you probably don't have enough confidence in it to let us test it out before we buy. That's just our stance. But that being said, like we'll always test, but usually you're not going to get a bigger lift, and they'll take the data, you know, at least in our experience.
Sure.
I mean, one last thing, just to add to what you said, scalability is a very important thing because with AI, there's a lot of excitement with the short-term thinking on, yes, it solved my use case, but when you really want to make this an enterprise standard, you really need to think about how scalable can you make this so that there's a broader adoption and it's going to sustain the growing needs of the business. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you really look at the selection of your technology for AI.
Yeah, and I would add to that, like, I think Omer made the point a couple of times too, like there's so many shiny objects right now, and there's a lot of really interesting pitches that I hear, right? But, you know, I'd say like kind of start with the friction points and where do you have specific bottlenecks and how do you exploit the current tech stack and maybe layer in, you know, simple workflows like we were talking about before versus, you know, chasing that would be really cool. We see those all the time. And, you know, ultimately if the team or, you know, whoever's the target user of the tool ignores it, which we've definitely seen. And I've learned I learned the hard way by deploying things that, you know, didn't get the uptake. You know, it's really wasted cycles.
Love it. Love it. This is great. And thanks, Amit, for the question. We definitely have to move on to the next one because we have a lot to cover. But I love the question. That's really, really relevant and timely. And I think relatable to all of us. Anyway, we're going to start the next question with the poll. Woohoo! Poll time. Okay, this poll is going to be about GTM execution. Who are the toughest teams to work with? So while you all vote, we'll give you some background. So Tao and I actually ran this poll at a group live at Forrester. And it originally didn't have marketing, and I was the one that said to put that in there. because it was my vote. I was like, it's actually our own team. They're hard to work with. Anyway, so who's the toughest teams to work with? Sales, product, finance, IT, marketing, or other? Interesting.
It's anonymous too, so nobody will know.
Oh, it's
And yes,
anonymous.
and yes, it just one. As soon as we get enough, we can share the results.
Yeah, see,
I can't see.
Amanda Thomas picks marketing too. There you go.
Oh no.
Well, it's tough because like a lot marketing ops oftentimes is part of marketing, so we're actually just calling out ourselves. It's hard to work with our own team.
All right, let's see the results. I can't see. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So sales at 27%, but
Mhm.
I mean it's a pretty good spread, honestly. Product at 19%. And finance is in third place. Oh no. Oh, I'm reading it wrong. Sorry. Okay. So sales at 27%, product at 19, and then IT is in third place at
Yeah.
18%. That's super interesting. Veronica, what'd you go for? And how come?
Oh gosh. Listen, I'll say it because I married an IT guy, but IT for me. I'll call him out specifically. IT's tough sometimes because sometimes I find that they really focus on the nitty gritty details of the technology and they get so into the weeds that they forget the purpose. And so trying to like help pull them out to help them realize what we're trying to achieve so they can stop nitpicking things. That's where I sit. So
I love that. Anyone else from the panel? Agree, disagree
I mean,
on
let's
hardest
say
people?
I have a slightly different perspective. Well, I'm in MarTech and I report to the CIO. So technically I belong to IT, but I think we've done some I do agree, Veronica. Traditional IT is really painful because they're very much you tell me what you need to be doing and I'll do that for you. And technology gets complex when implementation is like kicking off. But I think what we've done at Asana is we've kind of shifted that from a very service-oriented mindset to a product model where the teams need to have business context. They need to be working as partners, not as implementation doers. So that's kind of brought a narrative shift in how the IT organization functions fundamentally. So it's a very product-oriented model where we are very focused on business context, ROI, measurement. So there's a lot of background on the why we are doing certain things and what does it mean in terms of moving the needle for the business. Again, I think every organization is different and it's very nuanced. So at least with what we have in our current setting in the company I work for, I think IT is in an okay state.
very fair.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel like it's like I don't know, like sometimes you work with so let's say you work with a business systems team, and sometimes like the people that work there are kind of like they don't have maybe MarTech specific experience or they don't have experience working with marketers. So they come with it as like I don't know, like there's these frameworks that work really well for like engineering and product, but they need to be kind of adapted for marketing and for like because marketing's very different. It's very creative and emotional and like there's a lot of words and the users are interesting, so I find that that's challenging is to work with people that I hate saying like you can plug and play these the technical talent, but the best I would say, and it sounds like this is what's happening at Asana, the best business systems folks like actually really love what they do and they love marketing and they've been doing it for a while, and it's such a pleasure to work with those people, and it makes working with people without that experience much harder.
Totally. And so the way I work is it's a dotted line to the CMO. I'm in her staff meetings. I'm sitting in all the planning sessions. I'm in her QBR. So That's the context you need, and you need to really be that strategic partner who is basically like everything related to technology and operations. So it's not like a traditional thing where all the decisions are being made. There's absolutely no context, and you're just getting like an intake service request to either create an RFP, like figure out the procurement process, or just integrate a bunch of things. There's literally no context there, and I think that is the paradigm shift any technology team needs to bring in to really get that context and build credibility and gain seat at the table with the business leadership.
I love it. I love it. And this is kind of like a spin on the question that I think we had planned. But like, let's say, for example, you need to work with other teams, whether it's sales or the traditional version of IT or product. And let's say you have your own goals that you have to hit, but you depend on them to like execute, and like it only works in a partnership format. Like you need them to do their part. How do you, and I hate saying this word, but I don't know how else to say this, but like, how do you ensure that they do their part? Like how do you hold them kind of accountable? Do you think about it like that? Or do you not think about it like that? Have you had to think about it like that? Because um anyone from the panel want to take that one? It's a little spicy. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I can chime in. So we're actually dealing with this at Amazon right now. Our biggest kind of, I call them our problem child. I don't mean it that way necessarily, but is really our Salesforce team. So, I own and manage Marketo, and our Salesforce team obviously integrates into our Marketo. And there's a lot of dependencies on kind of what they're doing. And that's been our biggest challenge is, we have goals from a marketing perspective that we need to meet. We have updates that need to happen so that our marketers can build more robust marketing campaigns, whether it's fields that are in Salesforce that we need to pull in. But obviously the Salesforce team has their own timelines of things. And for us, what's been really important is making sure that we have regular meetings with them, regular sit downs to understand what is the roadmap, what are we trying to accomplish, why is it important, and making sure that that's very clearly laid out. Again, I always find bringing it back up to maybe not your own team goals, but if there's larger organization goals or business goals that you need to try and accomplish or that you're feeding into, I think that's been super beneficial to making sure that, this isn't just a one-off request that we have because it's, again, nice, shiny object. It's really something that's imperative to what we're doing and what we need. And I find regular meetings and having that face-to-face time or, video time with them is super important to bring them along. It goes a lot further than creating an Asana ticket or just sending them like a chat, making sure that they really identify and, we can have those conversations and they can ask more in-depth questions in in-person meetings. I think that's super important to help them kind of understand. And then we can kind of talk about it too. Obviously there's friction. But again, I think it goes a long way to having those in-person meetings and making sure that what you're talking about is not a shiny object. It ladders up to goals that you're trying to achieve for the business as a whole.
I think something I've seen too. Oh, I'm so sorry, Scott.
No, go ahead.
Okay, something I've seen too is that, working at these companies, it's very fast paced. And so we get so caught up in the pace of things that we forget to go back to basics. And basics is, why are we doing this? And making sure everyone just understands this is why we're doing it. So I start meetings with that, even though it could be a weekly meeting and we're meeting touching point. I always say, as a reminder, this is why we're doing this. The second thing I think is so critical is to say why it matters to each person at that table, and not them personally. This is not touchy-feely. It's your role. Your role matters in this. Here's why. Hey, IT, you're here at this table because this is the perspective that we need. And marketing, here's the perspective we need. Legal, here's the perspective we need. And this is what what we're looking for. And what that allows for is, one, gets everyone on the same page, but two, gives every single person unique agency in what they're doing there. And it reminds them of why we're doing this together and why we're trying to not do this in silos. And that can take 2 minutes in those weekly meetings, in those conversations. And it's just good internal PR of doing that over and over in your email communications, and always reminding of, this is the why, this is why it matters to you. Okay, let's get it back into business. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I was going to say along those same lines, I think it's starting with like aligning on, shared definitions and metrics, because I've seen it multiple times in my career where, coming in from a marketing point of view, we may be speaking a different language. And so like just starting there, I think the unique position for marketing ops people in general is that like it's a unique place in the go-to-market team that can kind of see across all the different layers between the systems and the process and the data and the measurement. And so like it's a, you know, to your point, Veronica, like connecting those dots is a great place for people in marketing ops to kind of, you know, lead those conversations and help to, you know, kind of diagnose the issues and make sure that everybody's on the same page, working toward the same goal, as you said.
Yeah, I love that. And the other thing I'll say, and then we can go to Valentine's question. The other thing is like I try to remember, I'm just realizing this now. I try to remember that there's other parts of their job too that they're responsible for and that they really need to do. And I got this feedback one time in my annual review, but we do a 360 feedback thing. I'm sure everybody does. And it was like another director from another department. And I love this guy, but his feedback to me was like, it seems like Daryl is distracted from like solving this email problem, right? And what he didn't know was I had recently taken over like one of the largest budgets that we have in marketing. And it was like my number one priority, clear as day, to make sure that we delivered on the budget and that everybody and that, you know, we facilitated it. And I guess the feedback was kind of true. Like I was a little bit distracted, but it was the right thing for the company. And I think that there's not really a moral of the story, but I think that when we meet with our coworkers, it's something that it part of influencing them is to remember that they have other responsibilities, you know. And I think that that's a really important thing. Let's go to Valentine. Are you okay
Valentine, if
with coming?
you're out there, because they may have had to leave because we can't find them to share their audio and video. So maybe we'll just ask the question on their behalf there. How can you remind IT the main purpose of the GTM so they get out of the weeds and provide key details you need for GTM?
Who would like to take that one?
I can chime in. I think bringing them along in the journey early on is very important. So the context is there because a lot of the times in my observation, the technology teams do not have the context of the why. Why are we doing certain things and what it means for the business? What does it mean for any KPIs? I don't think they're wired to think that way. They are technical experts. So really kind of shaking that up a little bit and providing that zoomed out perspective on the why early on, bringing them along in the journey would really, really help. And I know this is not an easy thing. It's exhausting. But I think setting this collaboration model, I've seen a lot of success with that. And this needs to be a practice, not a choice. And that's the way the shift that I was talking about earlier is going to come on. It's not an overnight thing. It has to be a consistent framework that you need to be applying to ensure that you have all the right parties when key decisions are being made. And that's how the credibility also starts getting built. That's just like the success that I have seen from my experience.
I agree. It's a muscle you have to build. One of the things that we do, I think I related to this question like 5 years ago. And now our process is every single IT project comes with like a business requirements document. And the first part of that document is the why that you're explaining. There's not one thing that goes over to our IT team or anyone who's working in Salesforce or any other product or integration that doesn't have a business requirements document. Could be very comprehensive or just one page, right? But there's always the first section has to be filled out and it has to explain why, what your potential ROI is. Not everything has a dollar associated to it, but are there dollars associated to it? Is there an efficiency understanding associated to it or any other kind of return? So a more tangible why on top of the collective strategic why. That's always at the top of the document. And that has to be a part of everything that we send over there. For us to, with quarterly sprints and all of those kinds of things, it just helps. It helps our IT team as well to say, hey, we started the quarter with this much on our schedule and this many sprints, and this is how we are prioritizing things, which makes it very easy for us to go back and forth with any other cross-functional teams where we're trying to kind of bridge that gap. But I do think that's a muscle that we've built over the last 5 years that I've found to be really helpful, where IT doesn't really, reprioritize for us. They understand what the returns are and why we're doing things, and they help us actually bridge even with other functional departments.
Yeah. The starting with the why is so important. I mean, like, how often do we get Slacks or emails and people just ask us for stuff and there's no why? They're just like, hey, can I get access to this? Hey, do you have this report? Hey, do you have this? And it even like with ourselves, if someone says, hey, I'm trying to improve the effectiveness of my campaign or this project, we're trying to measure it so that we can like make it better. It's underperforming right now. Can I have access to this report? And it's like, oh yeah, here you go. So I just love that. The other question that I had on the notes is, and this can be like a general question, like you don't have to answer it directly, but it's around measuring marketing operations effectiveness. And this has been a challenge, I think, across many companies, right? Where many GTM teams are measured on revenue or leads or whatever. But operations teams, do you all set goals? Do you all have reports that you track? How do you make sure how do we make sure your people are being effective? Anyone want to take this one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in. So we actually created like a whole KPI deck that our team goes through every month together. And then it's always updated if we need to go to any executive with what our KPIs are. As I mentioned earlier, my team's kind of split. You have an analytical team and then you have a technical development team. It's a lot easier with the technical development team to do this. And some of it can just seem really mundane, like how many reports did we put out there? But we do all kinds of things like, for example, we manage lean data. So like how many leads were routed, of those leads, like how much pipeline was created. If we weren't doing that properly, that number would be off. How many emails have we sent? What's our reply rates? Because we manage Marketo and that whole system. So it's a little boring. It's not as exciting as like meeting a quota or something like that, I guess. But we do that just to keep ourselves in check. How much volume are we doing? Are we within our own capacity? And when you look at the numbers on a spreadsheet, or not a spreadsheet, rather like a PowerPoint like that, we made like kind of a pretty one just for fun. It's really, you'll look at it after the end of a quarter or a month and say, wow, we did a lot of stuff. You're sort of going through the motions every day and not realizing that we sent 60 million emails and we produced this many automation jobs and we routed this many leads and those kinds of things. And that's been really, really helpful, especially whenever we have change in leadership or things like that. We're able to just pull that up and present it and show, hey, look, like here's how much we're doing and here's how impactful it is.
Yeah,
And do you just maintain that? Oh,
so yeah, go ahead if you had a clarifying question. I was just gonna kind of build on that.
I just wanted to know, like, how often do you present that monthly, Natalie, or like do you just have it on the
team monthly? Yep. So we'll do like first staff meeting of the month. We look at our KPIs from the prior month. So everybody updates their slides and we just go through, do a quick pulse check. Sometimes my leadership joins our staff meeting, so we end up presenting it to them. But yeah, we've just built it into our monthly cadence.
Yeah, I think those are great. Yeah, those are really good. I was just going to kind of add the thing that I would layer on top of all that, and I will acknowledge, like at a smaller company, we're not probably as good at that as I've seen at a larger company. So that's a good aspiration for us. But the way that I tend to think about it is sort of like, it's not just about obviously the system's health, but it's about conversion velocity. And if our processes and the work that the operations function is doing helps to drive more meetings booked, better conversion through the funnel, cleaner feedback loops between sales and marketing and BDRs, then we're doing our job. It's really kind of a strategic function as much as an operational function, and some of that can be measured in just some of those core pipeline and progression metrics. Because really, I think what a lot of us are trying to do is precision at scale, right?
Thank you. do want to move, apologies, moving to the next poll. So in the theme of collaboration, cross-functional collaboration, what's the hardest part of working with stakeholders? Unclear priorities, not enough resources. What's that? Shiny object syndrome, and the very popular other. So the hardest part of working with stakeholders.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It kind of ties into the last question too. So let everybody answer this one.
I know, can we select all? Yes. Right.
I just had one thought while people are answering. I was really like inspired by Natalie and Scott's answers, and I feel like for my own team, I kind of want to start to compile those metrics, and maybe just as a start, start sharing them around. You know, just to kind of get it started. And I know that it can seem like intimidating to, drum up a new forum and present, but maybe even just compiling the metrics, I think is a good place to start. Okay. What's the hardest part of working with stakeholders? Yeah, unclear priorities
52%.
is
Wow.
a really big one. Not enough resources. Other shiny object syndrome. Okay, how about Carolyn? What do you think of the results? What would you
So I
vote
think
for?
it's interesting. I would +1 all of the above because I think we've all run across that. But I think the unclear priorities is a big thing. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. Everybody's moving so quickly, and everybody, I think, sometimes thinks that their problem is the most important and it needs to be solved immediately. But I think it comes down to then taking that step back and understanding, like, what are the priorities, kind of what I talked about earlier. How do they fit into the larger goals? Do we have, again, echoing everyone else, the why, understanding what that looks like. I think especially when you're working with other cross-functional teams, even internally within other marketing teams, it's understanding why are you doing what you're doing. I'll give an example. I was building out a very large, complex program for one of our marketing campaign people, helping them build it out. They said, hey, it's a super large priority. We have to get this built out for our sales commercial team. Had it all built out, had what they had said was the why. And then when we got into the weeds and realized, once we pulled our audience, it was only going to 18 people. So while they maybe thought that it was a super big why and it was really important, I think it came back to then looking at a larger perspective of it and saying that may have been a priority, but potentially that wasn't the right priority that you were looking at. You prioritized something that maybe you shouldn't, that maybe there was something that would have gone to more than just 18 people for this huge priority that commercial was placing on you. So I think it's really interesting, and it really, again, solidified the having to come back to the why and understanding and having those deeper conversations cross-functionally as to what are the priorities. Are you actually going after the right priority?
That happens so often. Like the whole it's only going to 18 people thing. It's like, use Outlook. It's so crazy. I don't know why that happens. I think people, it could be something where maybe it is a really important priority. So they think that top priority also means complex, hard, use all of the things, but it
official
doesn't.
tools.
Those are two separate questions. You know what I mean? Like the most important email that you send could just be one that you send to your CEO or CMO, and it's really just your handwriting. I don't know. It's just that's PTSD for me, Carolyn, on that one.
Yes.
Any other comments on this one?
Okay, let's move into discussing the conflict. So how do you manage conflicting priorities across these different departments? I'd imagine all of the requests are coming at you fast and furiously. So how does that balance work?
I can take this one. I think what we do here is we do a product planning process, given we've prioritized the model, and that's like an annual thing that we do. Every year we sit down and then we figure out what are the intakes that we have, what are we supposed to be doing as a business. And then for each of the requests, we are going to assign company level goals, KRs, and objectives. And then we kind of break that down. It's a very like methodical process that we have. And then we do like an ROI analysis on what is the value and how does this request move the needle for the business. And then from there, we map out the level of effort and any dependencies on budget asks, et cetera. And then there's a centralized prioritization model we have, which is a very data-driven process where we ingest all of this and then and we map that to the capacity. Based on that, we have a list of things that we are going to be delivering and committing to for this quarter. And there's a constant reinforcement with the leadership to make sure that's socialized and aligned, because there's a lot of cross-functional dependencies we have. It's not a siloed team that's going to be delivering this. For example, there may be needs from sales ops, or there may be needs from product teams. So we want to make sure we bring in all the stakeholders together. This is an annual process, but things are changing so dynamically that every quarter we revisit this committed list to see if things need to change, and we kind of do a mini process every quarter. So it's pretty organized in how we kind of do the planning, but there's always a constant shift with so many changes and the AI boom that came in. So there's a need for us to revisit this methodology that we have on a very frequent basis to make sure we are working on the right thing.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. That reminds me of like one of my favorite quotes, which is, if you don't have a roadmap for your team, then someone's going to make one for you.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so it's good. Every quarter you should have it listed out. And then what do you do? Like, I mean, it sounds like, Amrita, when these sort of ad hoc things hit your team, do you kind of just sit down with them and say like, well, this is the roadmap. Sorry, doesn't fit
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there. Or like, do you try to squeeze it in? I don't, what do you do?
Yeah, I at least typically don't want to reject this right off. There's a trade-off conversation. And we evaluate with a very clear, it's a very metric-oriented approach on what is the value versus what we are doing now. And if that's of a higher value, let's say it's moving an important KPI like our ARR or a churn, that's when we're going to have the trade-off conversation, because everybody has limited resources. So we really need to be smart in how we put our resources to work. So that's where we really look at it from a value-driven lens. And then that's when we make a choice of XYZ needs to slow down if this needs to be accommodated. And then we end up doing that. We obviously released our AI Studio feature, and that was a huge company-wide effort. So all the major departments came in, we kind of slowed down certain other things, which was of a lesser value when compared to this. And we were collectively able to deliver that for the company. That's a good model that we have, and I think it's working fine. And obviously, there are tweaks that we are doing as and when we are learning and evolving.
I come from a background too, very similar, where it's very data driven, very processed, but I've also have worked at large enterprises and from higher ed that isn't as data driven and the chaos. So I'd like to offer perspective there. Sometimes leading up looks different. It just depends on the culture that you're in, and you really have to sit in that culture for a while to understand how it works. But learning the talent, I would say, because it's a skill to lead up is huge. Leading by example of, I'm data driven, so I'm going to try and run my team this way, even though my leadership doesn't work this way. So I love incorporating those types of principles. But I would say the other thing I've done too, as I've been in roles that aren't always with leadership, I'm not always talking with the C-suite. Would love to, but that's not always it. And so I want to say, no matter where you are in your career, the thing that will always come through is how you build relationships. And so if you want to just do good work, you don't have to be the top tier of everything, but if you just want to do good work, then invest in the relationships around you. And so if you are getting tons of different priorities, talk with your manager, build that muscle, build that relationship, making sure that they help you to prioritize. And it's not coming off of as, oh, I don't know how to do my job or anything, but that they're helping you to see that alignment. But build the relationships around you. And so as people come to you wanting to work on projects or bring something to your plate, or can you please do this and squeeze that in, figure out how to work that in. And sometimes it is a tit for tat. And I've totally done that. I'm like, you know what, this will be extra time for me right now, but I'm going to do it because it's going to be a way I can earn trust with this person, because I know I'm going to need their skill set down that line. And that's just how this works. And so I really have loved learning that skill of just building relationships, no matter where you're at. It doesn't always have to be top down or with the executives. Yeah, that's my dream state, right? It's all of ours, you know, to be that influential. But sometimes it's just being influential in your pod, but being sincere about it.
Yeah. And that's it, it gets harder as the company gets bigger. You know what I mean? For small agile teams, it's easy to meet everybody. And when things go off the rails, you know, it's like, oh, well, that's my friend over there. Like it's not their fault, you know. But at a bigger company, oftentimes these random people that are coming at you, and you're just like, who are these people? You know, like, are they even smart? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge, and I've heard it say like I like Veronica saying like, you know, it doesn't have to be just up. I've also heard like managing diagonally and across, like really building relationships with your boss's peers, and then like with your own peers, and that it definitely goes a long way. So really good one. Any other takes on that one?
I would just
Yeah.
add one thing that we are so accustomed to that shift or addition in priorities that we do a very similar like annual and quarterly type planning. But the only difference there for us is that we will like actually build in flex time. And so we just don't, we really try not to commit our quarter at 100%. Or if we do, it'll be things that are like stretch, nice to have, fun kind of things, right? Fun for us MOPS people anyway. And so, but we know that that's going to happen. And a lot of my team is very tenured at RingCentral. So, you know, referring to the cultural experience, like MOPS at RingCentral is like 7 to 10 years tenured at RingCentral, which is, I think, hard to find, but we are so accustomed to that like fast pace that that's something that we account for. And I think it's okay to do, right? Like our DevOps team is not going to plan at 100% because they will have 10 more projects thrown at them throughout the quarter. And we know that we can take those on and not push anything else. So that's our approach.
Yeah, I typically will kind of guide my teams similarly to like reserve about 20% of the capacity for the stuff that we just don't know about, and also be ready to completely shift course on some major priorities as and when the business needs evolve. Because right now, I mean, I'm seeing that, you know, all the time, just with all the AI stuff we were talking about before. Yext is kind of in the middle of a lot of that from a product perspective, and that, you know, demands some pretty significant shifts in how we're thinking about our GTM and our target accounts and all of that stuff. So we're, you know, we got to always kind of be ready to react. But it goes ultimately back to, I think, the same why, right? What's the why, and how does it map to, you know, the bigger goals that the organization is trying to drive to?
Yeah, I love that one. I think that oh, I just realized we have a question, and I think it's a little bit specific. So it's Diane. Diane, if you want to come off. Also, like if it's, you know, I think that we can kind of expand this question around collaboration to like multiple teams. It doesn't have to be just specific. But as Diane, do you want to come off and ask your question? Maybe not. It's kind of nerve-wracking. Oh, there you are. Okay, great.
Okay, maybe we can just ask the question for her. So
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to force her.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Here I am, guys.
Oh, there you are.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm a bit under the weather, so I'm going to stay off camera.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious, as a content marketer, I've had sort of colleagues and teammates just very reluctant to really jump onto the AI bandwagon. I'm here, I partner closely with DevOps, but I'm just curious what you guys are experiencing when it comes to that collaboration with content marketers. Is there any advice you would give or particular pain points that you kind of have to overcome to get folks to jump onto programs like Reggie that someone mentioned earlier? Does that make sense?
It does. I can take that one. I think that it has to come from, like, somebody has to sort of set that cultural expectation, I think. So at RingCentral, like Kira, who is at the time of us kind of launching Reggie and things like that, was our like CMO. Now she's our COO and president. She's so passionate about AI that it's like everybody is following suit. And then the other experience that we kind of had was in our product marketing team, we really had like a huge champion of using the tools to be more efficient. And that was like very much a lead by example kind of scenario. So for us, we're seeing like the adoption really takes off when you have the people that are just like heavy believers and really practicing and being able to show their results. Without that, sort of everybody, at least in my opinion, everybody kind of stays within the same comfort zone, right? So yourself or somebody else like really taking that leadership charge and then being able to say, look what I did, look what I figured out, it has been inspiring within our company.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo that as well. We have talked about champions within our, we call them creative garage. It's like our content and creative team. They have champions of AI within that. And I think for them, it's important as well to, again, going back to the conversation of like, is AI going to take your job? I think that's a huge concern for creatives and content people, especially with some of the tools, that came out of Adobe Summit and things like that. I think it's important as well to help people understand who are maybe a little bit more reluctant that, again, like AI is not going to take your job. It's actually going to make your job easier and free you up to do more strategic things that you want to do, more creative things that you want to be doing. Talking with some of the creative people, you're not going to have to sit there and resize 150 different banner ads. That could take all day or all week to do. It's going to allow you to be more creative, to create more things that are more meaningful to what you want to do, as opposed to some more of like those mundane tasks. And even for content as well, allowing them to be more creative with what they're writing, why they're writing it, coming up with extra and additional ideas for different pieces of content that they want to push out. I think, again, having that champion is super important to help people kind of nurture them through that process to understand AI is not going to take your job. It's going to make your job easier, but also going to allow you more of that creative capacity that I feel like people in the content world and the creative world are always looking for.
+1 on that. I personally, I have like a negative thing to say and then a positive thing to say. Personally, I'm trying not to be bitter about the whole like AI tooling thing, because I feel like I've been saying this at my company and many other companies for like years of like, let's try to automate stuff. Let's try to do this. But no one like really paid attention. And then all of a sudden, AI and a lot of people, and honestly, a lot of it's just automation, right? It's just like workflow automation. It's not really AI.
Thank you for saying
But yeah, but so now
Yes.
like now companies are like, now anything that's automated is all of a sudden AI. So it's getting all the attention, and it's kind of like, finally, but so that's the negative thing. The positive thing that I'll say is that I feel like careers, and I don't know if this resonates with people, I feel like careers is not really like climbing a mountain or something like that. It's more of like riding waves. And a lot of times you're just kind of like, steady, and you can't really do too much because you need this momentum. And I feel like this AI is a really big wave that all of us are like really well positioned to ride, because we're the ones that are more technical. We're the ones that know the data, and we know that like AI doesn't work without great processes and great people and great talent that knows how to do this stuff. You know what I mean? And I'm trying not to be bitter and just ride the wave, and I think that's that's the better place.
I'm glad you're speaking about your bitterness, because I think it's really fair. And I think those of us who have been on this wave, I mean, I've built my first AI model at Amazon for Amazon.com in 2021. I started building it in 2020, and then we released it in 2021. So I've been in this for a while. Like, it's not new. It's just not. It's new for us, and it's widely available. That's what's new. And so but Diane, going back to your question a little bit of like how to handle people, I think it's so important too. We always have to remember the psychology of the workforce. And even though that may not be our first go-to as marketers and operations, but I find when you're doing change management, you're focused on the people. You got to understand where they're coming from. So it's not always just fear. I think a lot of times people think it's always fear, and it's not. Honestly, most of the time it's change fatigue. They're so tired. It's more change. It's yet another change. And all of that is like death by 1,000 paper cuts. And so I think too, it's really important to be able to address the root of the resistance. Okay, is this fatigue? Is it fear? Because if you don't do that, you're never going to be able to address it and move on. You don't dwell in it, you don't sit there forever, but if you are just able to address it, find it, you can move on and then bring people with you.
Yeah, thank you all. This all resonates and is helpful in dealing with, at the risk of slandering my own colleagues in content marketing. Sometimes there's a bit of a precious attitude when it comes to creative that I think we need to move beyond.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks, Ann. Final poll. Got to move to the final poll. We're running out of time.
Yeah.
All right. One of my favorite topics. Okay, leadership. What's the top trait for moving into MOPS leadership? Is it delivering results, executive presence, strategic thinking, or influencing team culture? Depends on the company. Yep, that's a good one. Delivering results, executive presence. These are so tough because you kind of need multiple, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe like well, no, it's phrased correctly. What's the top trait? So it doesn't mean that you don't have these other things,
Mm-hmm.
but like if you had to pick the top one, what's I love
Let's
these kind of
see.
hypothetical questions,
Oh,
honestly.
look at that.
Okay.
That surprised me actually. 47% on strategic thinking.
How about Scott on this one? Love to hear your take.
Yeah,
What'd
I
you
mean, I
vote
think,
for, and what do you think of this results?
yeah, they're all valid. I would have also chosen strategic thinking. Along with the group, I think, to me, it's, like it's how do you get upstream, from a marketing operations standpoint. It's not just about the tactical. It's about understanding, we've talked about it throughout this session, the why, what problem are we trying to solve? Go upstream from, what might be immediately on your plate and start to be more strategic in how you lead, whatever level of people you're working with and collaborating with through that process. So I think, but again, I think all of them are super important.
Nice. Yep. I was just laughing at Jomar's thing. But
Yes, I mean, strategy is it's a really loaded word. Everybody wants to do strategy, like at work. It's a natural thing. But I do think in marketing ops, there is a real legitimate component, back to the sort of the conversation earlier about all the different dots that MOPS has the ability to connect. And so being able to sort of lean into that as an individual and share the insights that may be outside of the immediate conversation, but can be brought to bear to, achieving greater things.
some of the I agree. Some of the ways that I like to phrase strategic thinking is I like to say like either critical thinking, or one that I've heard that I really liked is rigorous thinking. And it's kind of like whenever you have a project, trying to go back to first principles and like understanding, how can we make things better to achieve our goals? And then the flip side is non-strategic thinking, which is a little bit like order taker, or just manage the project that you were given. So like I think it's helpful to think of the opposite of like, hey, this landed on my plate. Like, how can we, and it might even be me thinking outside the box. Like, how can we make this completely better? How can we change things to make this the best? And I think it's honestly, I think it's really rewarding to do that. One time, I'll share this quick story. One time, my team was like forced to take on these product notification emails that I knew they didn't drive revenue. I was just like, oh my God, those things don't do anything but annoy people. And I pushed back so hard on taking it. But I realized over time, and I was like in every meeting trying to fight against these product notification emails. But then I realized that if my team took it over, we had the opportunity to actually improve them and make them actually do something. Make them make an impact to our customers in a way that they would like. And I completely changed my tune, saying like, hey, like, so instead of rejecting something that I hated, I embraced it. And I said, you know what, we're going to take this on and it's going to become ours. And we're going to make it better than, anything you've all ever seen before, or something like that. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And any
Yeah,
other comment? Oh, go
Well,
ahead.
I was just gonna, because I saw some of the comments in the chat about delivering results, and I think that's totally true. I think what your example just sort of points to, though, is that like being able to be, think strategically about a problem like that will lead to improved results. And so I think they're
That's true.
interlinked.
That's true. And then the question I think most people have is, okay, great. How can MOPS professionals position themselves as strategic leaders and not just executors? So everybody wants to think strategically. How can you convince the org that you're actually doing that and getting to your positions? I think everybody's aspiring to.
I was just going to say, I actually lean towards the executive presence because of what you just said. My experience has been that without like, and I don't think of executive presence just like as like I'm very good at or not good at presenting to a C-level person, right? I sort of thought about it in a broader scope, which is like relationship building in general. I actually maybe think that would have been a better criteria than just the executive portion. And I say that because, we talked, kind of going back to one of the original questions, like teams that are difficult to work with. When you have strong relationships with the executives in your different cross-functional groups, you can start to apply like the strategic thinking and the results in a way that gets you the right attention from the other groups. Right. And so that's been my experience. Like, and I actually came from sales ops to marketing ops. So I have a different journey maybe than some others.
The dark side.
Yeah, I came over from the dark side, which has been it's super helpful for me because I know what those people are going through in their role. Anyway, I think that the relationships with executives and others, right, has been more of a like solid foundation for my MOPS career than the others. The other things kind of followed suit, but having those relationships and that guidance was most important.
I think what you're saying there really is trust. I mean, trust carries so much value. And if that's the currency that you're using, then everything else, to your point, will come in line. Sorry, I thought.
I was just going to add to what Natalie, you said, 100% with you on the relationship. But I think just kind of going back to my journey, I like started with nowhere and coming in from like a very technology oriented background. To get the seat at the table was really challenging to even build that. You know what I mean? Like the relationship didn't exist. I had to create one. It was more of a chicken and egg scenario. And like, where do I start? I think the way I started was establishing credibility through results. And how I did that is to sharpen my business acumen to really identify what are the opportunities that can create business value. So once we did that, delivering that's how I started the flywheel of that trust-based relationship. So that's, again, everybody's background is different, but I had like no place to start, was really figuring out where do I go, what do I do, how do I start? And this is the path that I chose. And I think that really created that flywheel, as I said, and that built trust, and then more and more started coming.
Yeah. I love that flywheel comment because it really is very cyclical, right? There's not just one thing. One leads into the other, and we all of them are a great starting point, but you can't have just one.
Exactly. Everybody's path is different. But again, the biggest takeaway for me and like what I want to like tell the group is really it's self-awareness is really important, and then understand what is going to work in your context, because every organization, team dynamics, your skill sets, partnership, there's a lot of permutation combination here, and there's no like straight linear path. So really creating that self-awareness of where you are and where do you need to go, that mapping is going to be very important for you to figure out how do you actually kickstart that.
Yeah, that's why these polls are so fun, because they're actually not one, there's not a one answer, like Natalie was saying. It's like, it's like a false dichotomy or whatever you say, where it's not, because let's say, for example, you have great executive presence, but you don't know what you're doing. People will eventually find out, like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And it'll get around. So you actually have to and without results, we don't really have anything. We're really just talking. So I think that's a really big one. I loved what Amrita said around self-awareness, because we each have like our strengths, and we also have our weaknesses. And so for me, like, I personally know that like I'm like an ideas person, and I love when I attach to something new or hear about something new, I kind of want to just act on it right away. Whereas I'm really glad a lot of people on my team are a little bit opposite. They're a little bit more like wary. They like to like analyze all the requirements. And it really helps me, because otherwise, I can spread my team way too thin. And it's things like that important. Anyone else comments on what was the question? Like, how do we position ourselves, right, as strategic leaders and not just execution people?
I think you nailed it, though. I think it's because our strengths and weaknesses are varying. It's a soundboard. You're gonna amp up certain things at different times and tone things down, and you're always looking for that equilibrium of sound. And eventually you'll get it to a place where you're like, this is solid. And that's how I always think about career in general. It's a soundboard. Sometimes you're amped up somewhere and you're not somewhere else, but that's where you're always fine tuning.
I will say that, because, like, if I had to guess, so most of us on the call are operations people. That means I would say most of you are data driven and process driven, and we don't like fluff. We like, how do we get this shit done? You know what I mean? We don't like things that are just like visuals on slides. We like the actual flow chart of like, how are we going to do this? So knowing that you are probably more data driven and than most other people, I will say that oftentimes what I see ops people a little bit weaker in is the executive presence and the leadership presence. Like, they know what needs to be done, but they struggle to communicate the why and like the value behind it. And they struggle to communicate to leaders why these things are so important and why they take some time. And I heard this really great example one time of like if you're decorating your house and you want to like mount a TV on this wall or have a really great lamp on this wall, like an ops person will tell you, like, you need electricity in that wall and into that place. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. It's not possible. And that's like the kind of communication and like simplification I think that we need to do for leaders and for other teams. You know what I mean? All this AI stuff's not going to work without data, and without clean data, and without everything connected to the systems correctly in a way that data flows all the way to the customer, and in a way our stakeholders can actually use and operate. Like, it's just not going to work. And I think that if I would say, like, if I could have given advice to my younger self on like what I needed to work on, and it was that I really needed to work on like my communication. Any other questions from the group, questions from the audience? Tal, anything?
No, one thing I will say about the, positioning yourself as a leader, sometimes people wait. They wait until they have a fancy title and they're like, okay, now I'm a leader. Now I can do this stuff. The thing is, if you don't practice that stuff in advance, people aren't going to see you as a leader in advance. So can you deliver big results? Can you think big picture? Can you collaborate? Can you, move projects along without escalating all the time, etc. So I would implore people right now, just practice that. And that's I'm going to put this person on this project, or this person might be a good director one day, etc. So try to do that now instead of waiting until you have permission with a title. Because if you don't have it, that title is not going to help you get IT do what you need to. So that's just something I've noticed in my career.
Yeah, and just one other thought on that, because I think connecting back to Daryl's comment, like the fact that, as a marketing ops person, you have the data foundation is huge. Like you can really take advantage of that for all those situations and tell that story. And, that's where you can start to build that executive presence is just in how you tell that story and then get closer to the outcomes. I mean, now that you probably had an advantage coming from the sales side, because I think where a lot of marketing ops people can succeed the best is by getting close to that sales motion and really understanding, what's going to make an impact. And that goes back to the data and the storytelling.
Yeah.
100%, 100%.
Thank you for everyone, because it is a longer event than our usual monthly huddles that are an hour. So thank you for hanging in there and staying with us. So we did get to flesh out a lot of these topics more fully, and it's great that we could learn from each other. You might hear from somebody on the Uptempo team if you want a LARP bottle, if you've attended here, and also to better understand your marketing planning process as the planning season comes around the corner. Our next event is June 11th, Leading Through Chaos, Ops Leadership in Reorgs, Layoffs, and Pivots. Not necessarily the fun stuff, but I think a lot of us are going through that kind of stuff. So please join us on June 11th, where we go back at the huddles. Daryl.
Such great advice. I learned a lot. I mean, we talked about AI, we talked about career, we talked about working with tough teams, and I hope everybody was able to take some things away. And our panelists, Scott, Natalie, Veronica, Amrutha, Carolyn, really appreciate you spending all this time with us out of your day. Any closing remarks from the panelists? Anything that you all want to say goodbye?
Thank you for inviting us. It was incredibly helpful. There's always something to learn, no matter where you're in your career. So student always. Thank you.
Student always. I love it.
Agree. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll wrap now. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. We'll see you on June 11th.